Welcome to Shortcuts to Mastery. I'm your host, Maria Henning, and in my universe, life is for growth and time is for bending. So hop in, my friend, buckle up, and let's get into it. What's up, my friend? Welcome to another episode of Shortcuts to Mastery. I am so excited you're here. We are getting into one of the systems that has formed the foundation of my life and business over the last 2 years, human design. When I envisioned the podcast, I always wanted to start with this episode, human design, and then the Gene Keys episode as the second and third episodes, because I'm very much in my life a context giver, context provider. And throughout the rest of this podcast and all of my body of work, these two systems, these two schools of thought and systems and teachings form the basis of everything I'm going to talk about. And so it would be unfair if I didn't give you a great foundational place to start to understand not only what these systems are about, what these teachings really bring to us, but also my perspective on them and also how I came to learn them and experience them and the difference that they've made in my life. So this episode is going to be all about human design. I wanted to start with human design first, not only because that's, how I think about it, but it's also because human design actually came first in terms of chronologically when these systems were downloaded and given to us. So Gene Keys came after human design. So I'm going to give you a little bit of that backstory, history, foundational context of, where these systems come from and how they came to pass. And we're going to start with human design, which is going to be really exciting. So very much a teachable episode, really great one to come back to, even if you're new or even if you have been seasoned, you're a seasoned veteran in the world of human design. It could be interesting to hear another teacher's take on it. And this is also great to send to your friend or family member who is curious about this. My interest is in making this stuff understandable. There is a lot of jargon in both of these systems, and I'm going to, I was about to say the word complain. I meant compare and contrast. There's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of vocabulary, and we're going to keep it simple, understandable, and applicable for the modern human who wants to use these systems in their life in a practical way and doesn't necessarily want to, dedicate their life to it like me or something in order to understand it. So that's what this episode is going to be about. Super excited. Let's get into it. So what is human design? Human design is a system that is a synthesis of a few other systems, whereby the result of that synthesis gives us a very clear, very detailed manual of how our energy works, how our human was designed, human design. The type of information that we get from our human design is extremely practical, specifically how can we best make decisions that are aligned for us? How can we best use our energy? We can get really deep into the body, how you're best designed to take in information or food or what environments are best for you. There's just a lot of information, but we're specifically talking about the human, the body, your energy, how you work. So when we think about the difference between human design and Gene Keys, in the human design system, we are focused on the human and how that physical vehicle works and how it was designed. It's super practical. It's a little bit more of like a masculine system. There's a lot of information. And then Gene Keys is more of like a map of the journey that you're going to go on and the challenges and breakthroughs that you're going to experience. So more about your experience, and human design is more about your energy and how you're designed. Something I love about the human design system is that the official subtitle of the system is the science of differentiation, because it really is a science, like in the sense that it's so in depth, it's so calculated, and the result of those calculations and the result of our chart just shows us how ridiculously unique we are. There is some number that is calculatable that I don't know right now off the top of my head that shows you the odds of getting the design that you have, and it's like, again, some ridiculously low number. You are one of a kind, and human design is an amazingly validating system to show you exactly how unique you are and how you are not designed to act like everybody else. And so one of the cool things before we get into like some of the, jargon breakdown and some of the history of the system, like why human design is so cool, is what I always say about human design, even about gene keys and also about astrology, which will come into play here, is that these systems, and for me, I started with human design, it gives me, I'll just speak for myself, but my clients often relay this back to me, it gives you this like very aggressive validation of who you are and very emphatic and compassionate permission and encouragement to keep being who you are and to stop trying to be like everybody else. The type of validation that you're getting is not just like, again, let's think about like what you would hear from like a, I don't know, Myers-Briggs test or something like that. Like, oh, you're really enthusiastic about life and you're an extrovert and whatever. Like, it's not like, so it's not, what I'm trying to say is it's not vague validation. It's like very specific validation. Like, hey, the way in which you're meant to talk and think is actually exactly like this. Or the way you're meant to like organize your apartment could be more like this. There's something in human design called environment, describes your environment, the way you're best designed to be in an area, so it's like, it's just, it can be very, very validating, which gives us like the relief of, oh my God, I'm not crazy. And I've always wanted to be this way, but I was told that that wasn't okay or that I should be like everyone else. And it says, no, you're designed to be the way that you've always known yourself to be. Here's some languaging to describe that and how to work with it more and how to discover it and dive deeper into it. And please keep being yourself. Please unlearn all the other bullshit. This is the deconditioning process in human design. Please unlearn all this other bullshit that you learned that told you you weren't designed, or that told you you were supposed to be this way, that doesn't feel authentic to you. And please do the thing that feels like it's true to your soul. So that's what I love about human design. That's one of the main reasons I really fell in love with it. One of the validations that I got, which you heard in the first episode, if you heard that, was that I, as a manifesting generator, which we'll get into what the heck that is, am designed to essentially do lots of different things, multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate, and kind of blend all of those seemingly unrelated things together into one. And that working on like a set schedule is incorrect for me. And I need to kind of be able to flow with my energy. And all of that was just so validating at the time. It seems simple, but I had never heard anyone or any personality test or even astrology, describe, hey, like this thing that feels like it's a core part of your personality, being multi-passionate. I would always describe it as like I'm a Renaissance person because I'm like a scientist and an artist or whatever. I had never heard a system tell me that that's actually like really correct for me. So anyway, that's some of the really aggressive and specific validation that you get from human design. And for me, I also believe gene keys. And now that I know more of astrology, also astrology. So speaking of astrology, let's get into the 4 systems that the human design system draws from, so we can have a little bit of a, historical context and also honor the systems that human design borrows from. So the first is astrology. We use astrology to calculate the chart by using our birth time. So just like putting in your birth time into an astrology software, it will give you your astrology chart. Using your birth time in a human design software, if you want to use mine, it's mariahenning.com/chart. It's free. Putting in your birth time in that chart or in that calculator is what is going to allow you to get your chart. So you don't need to take a test, a personality test or anything like that. It's an unchanging imprint, essentially. And it's like a screenshot of your energy on that exact date and time that you were born. And by the way, if you don't know your exact birth time, I have some resources on that website that I just sent you to, mariahenning.com/chart. We can talk more about it later if that's something that you guys are that you're curious about, but there are definitely ways to work around not having an exact birth time and still get a really accurate human design chart. So that's the first system that we borrow from, astrology. There are even some human design teachers that call human design the new science of astrology. It's just, you could say it's just so astrologically based. The second system that human design borrows from is a system called the I Ching. The I Ching Oracle, the Book of Changes is the subtitle. And it's a 5,000-year-old Chinese divination text that spells out 64 archetypes of human behavior and change that are calculated from combinations of masculine and feminine energy. And each of the 64 archetypes is a unique combination of those yin and yang archetypes. So we have astrology as the system to give us the chart and have that be an unchanging thing that we are. And then the I Ching is going to give us some of the languaging around that uniqueness, essentially, and give us some of the descriptors of our particular energy. Because when we translate those archetypes as just kind of in the I Ching, they're not specific to anyone. They're just these wide-reaching 64 archetypes of human behavior and change that anyone can relate to. When we put that into the human design system, yes, it's still the same. We all have all of the 64 archetypes and we can all relate to them, but astrology is going to tell us which ones are more specific to us in what areas of life. So that's super helpful. From there, we borrow from the chakra system, particularly the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, the seven chakra system that a lot of us in the New Age spirituality practice think of, the rainbow circles of energy, or spheres or orbs, or however you describe them. But in the human design system, we take two of those centers or two of those chakras and we split them in two, giving us a total of 9 in the human design system. And human design describes those energetic hubs as centers and not chakras. And what's cool about the chakra system, one of the other things that it gives us is that it gives us a general location in the body. I mean, once you get into human design, it's very specific, but just thinking of it in a more kind of general bird's eye view way, the chakra system, the 7-center chakra system that we typically think of, those have a place in the body, right? We have the throat chakra. Where's it going to be? The throat. No one's surprised. The root chakra at the base of the spine. Those locations translate over to the human design system as well. And you'll find the root center at the base of the spine. You'll find the throat center where your throat is. So that's really helpful from the chakra system. It gives us this languaging to describe energetic hubs in the body and specific placements as to where they are. So you can start to see how we're starting to get into the design of the human. Like, we are now putting this energy onto our bodies and trying to understand in what unique way do we use those archetypes. And then the last system that we're going to look at here is the Kabbalah Tree of Life, which is a teaching essentially on certain spiritual paths that you can take. And specifically what the human design system kind of borrowed from that is the idea of connecting the centers together with specific, what they're called in human design, they're called channels, but specific like energetic paths. And literally, think of it as like the human design chart looks a lot like a circuit board, where there's like centers of energy and then wires leading from one energetic center to another. And the visual of what the Kabbalah Tree of Life looks like is where the human design system got inspiration from in terms of how to connect the centers together and not just have them be kind of floating, hubs of energy, but rather static in the body, but unique to how each of us move energy between those archetypal centers. So those are the 4 systems that human design really draws from. We're also going to borrow a little bit from epigenetics and quantum mechanics, but we don't necessarily need to get super into that. Really, just epigenetics is kind of what I was describing with this nature versus nurture thing. It's like, human design gives you your nature, gives you the energy that you imprinted when you came onto this earth. And then depending on how you nurture it, that will describe how you actually use that energy you were given. And epigenetics is the study of how your genes express depending on your environment and lifestyle choices. So, your genes are your nature and your environment and lifestyle choices are your nurture. So that's how we borrow from that. And then the quantum mechanics piece is just it speaks to the fact that in human design, we're not just using the astrology of the day you were born. We also use the astrology of 88 degrees, which is around 88 days before you were born. And we put those two together into the quantum chart is what it's called. So those are the four slash kind of six, four ancient systems and two modern systems that human design borrows from in order to create the human design chart or the human design body graph. This is where, as much as I love and adore audio content, a visual is so helpful because, it would be quite difficult for me to give you like the most accurate picture possible just from pure description, audio description of what a human design chart looks like, because they are so in depth and look quite complicated at first. Honestly, like when the first time I pulled my chart, I pulled it for a course and I just got what I needed for what the course directed me to get, which was one tiny thing in that chart. And I fucking threw the rest of it away because I was like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like, this is like very complicated. So if you do want a visual, just Google human design chart if you want to see any chart, but if you want to see yours and you do know your birth time, go to mariahenning.com/chart to get it for free. And what you'll see there is, I just want to put this all together for you. You'll see a human-like shape in the center, and it's going to have 9 big shapes on it. Those are the 9 centers. Those 9 shapes have channels, have little paths connecting one center to another. Those are called the channels. They come from the Kabbalah. And then on each side of those channels, there will be a number, and those are the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching mapped onto these 9 centers of the human design body graph. And if you look at the 2 columns on each side of that humanoid figure, you'll see the 13 planetary placements that we use in astrology. There are many more, by the way, in astrology, many more than 13 planets and planetary influences, but in human design, we just use these 13. And you'll see them on each side of the chart. And the one on the right side of your chart is the astrology of the day you were born. And the one on the left side of the chart is the astrology of 88 days before you were born. So on the right side, you'll see it in black. That is described as your conscious energy or your personality. And then on the left side, you'll see it in red. That is described as your unconscious energy or your design. So that is the best breakdown that I could give you of the human design chart, and giving you the context of the 4 ancient systems that it draws from and the 2 modern systems that it kind of fuses together. So it's definitely a synthesis of a lot of different schools of thought, and going into each of those I think is useful. I think honoring those systems is important and knowing where it comes from. I personally have gotten a lot of value from really understanding astrology, for example, and I'm feeling I love the gates in human design, and so those come from the I Ching. So I feel really drawn to studying the I Ching. I know there's going to be a time where I get in a really intense rabbit hole about it. It's not necessary to get into all of it, but I think it is really useful, and I have found a lot of use from it. So now you might have an understanding of what the heck you're looking at when you look at a human design chart. Like, if I had had that kind of description of like, hey man, the big shapes are the chakras, they're centers of energy, they each have a certain theme, and the 2 columns you see on those sides, that is describing the planets and what I Ching hexagram or gate they are activating. That would have been so helpful, and I probably wouldn't have just thrown the chart away the first time that I pulled it, which is what I did. So yeah, that's like the body graph explained, and I think you need to understand, like I was saying, those 4 systems to kind of understand what the heck you're looking at. You might be wondering the history of the system in terms of like where it comes from, where it's been around, or since when has it been around. And specifically, it was channeled through a guy named Ra Uru Hu. That was the name he gave himself after his experience in 1987. With the help of some substances, he had an encounter with what he describes as the voice for 7 or 8 days. I don't exactly remember the duration of time, a very long time, where he was kind of taught the system. And he spent the rest of his life until he passed away, I believe in 2005, continuing to develop the system and teach it and share it, all over the world, creating lots of content, lots of seminars, and having all of those seminars transcribed into books, which are the, source material that we have today from the source himself, Ra Uru Hu. His background, he's from Canada, and his actual name is Robert Allen. I can never pronounce his last name, Krakauer or something like that. but he gave himself the name Ra-Uru-Hu after his encounter in 1987. So, really fascinating backstory. Here's where I'll say that I don't personally go to a ton of source material all of the time. Ra, as a teacher, is kind of a controversial guy and says a lot of crazy stuff in his teachings, and it's quite difficult to understand. And a lot of human design source material reads like anatomy textbooks, because that's kind of what we're getting here. We're kind of looking at the body in these very, esoteric terms, but very specific and almost scientific and almost kind of like medical terminology. It's very, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of jargon in the systems. So I like to go to source material, but it definitely wouldn't be where I send a beginner. I didn't start with source material. I started with teachers that had understood and kind of like digested this content. And then after I had a basic and foundational understanding of the system, kind of like what I'm trying to give you here, then I was like, okay, well, now I have a context of what the heck I'm kind of looking for. And I can take that to source, which is very convoluted, and there's just a lot of information, and I can start to filter and sift for what I'm trying to find, or what I'm trying to go deeper on. So for me, my human design study is now I have, over the last couple of years of studying the system, I have a really great understanding of the overview and all of the possible things that I could start looking into. And I go to lots of different teachers, and I go to source too, but with the understanding of the context of where it's coming from, if that makes any sense. So that is all the backstory that I think you need on the human design system if you're curious about the history of how it came to be and the systems that it borrows from in order to receive the product of the system, which is the human design chart. And now I just want to share some of the things that you can learn from your human design that are life-changing. And if it's appropriate, if it comes up naturally, I'll share maybe some of my own human design learnings and things I've gotten from, studying the system and experimenting with it for so long as we go through. Speaking of experimenting, that's actually what the human design, besides it being the science of differentiation, the other kind of name for human design is the experiment, or the human design experiment. And that speaks to this idea that, yes, learn the theory, learn, either from a teacher that has digested this content before or from source. Great. Learn the source material, but then experiment with it. Then try it on. See if it actually resonates with you. See how you tend to experience your nurtured human design in your life. It's not about just taking this on and believing it as this is exactly how it's going to show up for me, and kind of this gospel truth that is, unchanging. It's actually really important for you to take on this information and play with it in your life and see, essentially to experiment with it, try it out, test it out, think like a scientist, and see what the results of that experiment are, and then continue testing and tweaking and changing as you continue along your journey into using human design for your self-development, personal discovery, spiritual growth, whatever it is that you're using your human design for. So, human design, an experiment, the science of differentiation. What can you learn from human design? So there's 3 really important things that you'll hear often in the human design system, which is type, strategy, and authority. We might dive into deeper things. I'm more excited about this podcast being a little bit more conversational, not so much teachy. So I don't know that I'll teach aggressively like I am in this episode on some of the countless other topics that human design gets into. But we'll get into them in more casual ways. But for today, I want to give you a breakdown of what type, strategy, and authority are and why they are the foundations of the human design experiment. So just like in Myers-Briggs, there's 16 different archetypes, and in astrology, there's 12 different zodiac signs. There's a similar top level, the biggest umbrella level, so to speak, in the human design system too, and that is type. Depending on who you're learning from, you'll find people describe it as 4 different types or 5 different types. I like to go with 5, acknowledging that one of those types is a blend of 2 others. And type is, it's energy type. It describes your aura, it describes generally the big kind of archetype of how your energy works. And each of those types has a way in which they're meant to navigate the world and kind of take action, so to speak, on important things, which is called strategy. And so what's really helpful about that is that not only do you get a really helpful descriptor of your overall kind of vibe, essentially, of who you are and how you kind of move in the world, each of those gives you, or depending on what you are, it gives you exactly how you're meant to use that energy most effectively and navigate and take action in the world, which is really, really fun. So that is type. That gives us strategy, like I was saying. So it gives you the way in which you're meant to take action in the world. And then the other thing that we have that we place a lot of focus on in the human design world is authority. Authority is really helpful because it gives you essentially the lowdown on how you are meant to make decisions that are best designed for you. And that was so helpful to me because, and I think for everyone, honestly, that has ever found human design, because it's so helpful to know, like, how do I make a decision? Like, there's so many ways that we're taught in the world to make decisions, either make a pro and con list or do a cost benefit analysis. One of my little brothers is like we call him the min-max god, because he just like tries to find any way to maximize like any sort of, to essentially get the best like outcome of his cost benefit analysis. And it's just it's a thing that he's very good at. And also that's not necessarily how everyone's meant to make decisions. And what's cool about authority in human design is that everyone has a unique way to make their own decisions. The way that I make decisions is going to be different than 50% of the rest of the world, which is cool. So, and then it gets even more granular after that. So overall, when we look at the human design system, you're either going to fall under one of those 5 big categories of energetic type. That's going to give you some really helpful granular understanding of who you are and how you're meant to essentially thrive in the world. You get strategy, which gives you how you're meant to take action. And then you get authority, which is how you're meant to make decisions. And so that's why in the human design system, the kind of joke of it all that I always say is it's so intensely detailed. There is so much information in this chart. We could literally pull a chart to understand how you sleep at night. And also, it's actually not necessary, because if you use just your strategy and authority, you will get to everything that you desire in this life, because the math is simple. It's like if you take action in the way you're designed to take the best action, and if you make decisions the way you're best designed to make decisions, then of course you're going to be led to the exact right things for you at the exact right time, because you're literally following how you're designed to just move and choose in the world, which is just so nice. So those are the 5, or those are the 3, I was thinking of type. Those are the 3 kind of main things that you want to understand about yourself when you start doing your human design journey. But that's kind of the bedrock. That's kind of the foundation. I mean, once you get into human design, you'll find, you might start to want to play with the gates and the centers and the channels and the planets and all of that. But always, always, always come back to your strategy and authority, which is, again, the teaching that we always hear in the human design system, but it really works for a reason. Come back to how your energy is best designed to make choices, make decisions, and then take action in the world. So that is all of the context that I wanted to give you on the human design system. We're actually not going to get into all the types and strategies, and definitely not all the authorities in this episode. We might get into them in later on, but I actually wanted to give you the context of the system as a whole, and not necessarily the teachings of that system. The teachings are this is your type, and this is your strategy, and this is your authority, and this is your incarnation cross, and all the other things that we can get to. Again, I know the teachings will come up for sure the more that we chat on here, and I've created lots of content on the teachings if you check out my Instagram at by Maria Henning. But I specifically, for the intentions of right now where I'm at in this podcast, I wanted to give you a foundational understanding of the system of human design as a whole, which is this synthesis of all these other systems that gives us this manual of how our human was designed. And yeah, and the other part of that is like that it's the foundation that I really lean on for, but just really for the basics for myself, like type, strategy, and authority. I mean, maybe not the basics. I definitely get into way deeper stuff, but in particular where I'm at in my life and my interest in my study and the thought leadership that I'm developing, I'm actually a lot more focused on the gene keys. So we're going to get into the gene keys in the whole next episode, like I was saying earlier. But the gene keys borrows from human design. And so to understand gene keys, you kind of have to understand human design. I mean, I know that there's people that just look at the gene keys and don't look at human design. That's totally a perfect path. I like to focus on both, just like how I was saying that I have understood so much more about human design from understanding the centers and the or rather the systems it borrows from, so like the chakras in that case, but the I Ching astrology. It's the same with gene keys. I get so much more from gene keys from understanding human design. I started my journey with human design. That was actually the first system that I knew about. I only knew human design for the first year. So from 2019 to 2020, like I was saying in my story episode. And then it was through doing my coaching certification in human design and gene keys that I discovered gene keys. I didn't know what the fuck gene keys was, to be honest. When I was when I took that, when I enrolled in that certification, I was more interested in the human design part. But then I actually ended up falling in love with gene keys so much more. It resonates even deeply. I mean, human design already resonates aggressively. So I was surprised to find a system that I loved even more than human design. So yeah, and I'll just say this. With the gene keys, we're mostly just focused on the gates of human design, which are the archetypes or the hexagrams of the I Ching. So understanding all of those together makes me a better gene keys teacher. So yeah, that is the foundational and historical context of the human design system. If I were to wrap it up in a bow for you, again, because I do that a lot, and I think I've tried to wrap it up in a bow a couple of times already in this podcast episode, but just to finish out, human design is a synthesis of other esoteric systems that gives you your manual to how your energy works. And at the very foundations of that manual, it gives us the flavor of your aura, which is your type. Each of those flavors has a certain strategy to navigate and take action around the world. And then specific to you, you're going to have your own unique authority in terms of how you make decisions. And that is like the foundation of my life, is understanding my body and my energy and like how my aura wants to move throughout the world and how it interacts with others. I lean on that so much from the human design system. So that's human design. Some other things you can get into in the world of human design if you're curious about, because I want you to know what's possible with the system. There are many other things. One of the things that I first got into as well was the incarnation crosses in human design, which gives you your purpose essentially in life. There's all of the kind of really granular, almost like health stuff, which is called PHS, literally primary health system, which can give you your determination, which is how you're meant to take in food and information. So like digestion, eating, literally, your environment, which is cool. There is the flip side of that, which is more about your psychology. So how you're motivated or how you see the world. That's motivation and perspective. If you really study your unique mechanics a lot, which would be to get really granular on understanding your specific centers and how they are defined and connected to other centers through what gates and what channels, that would give you a ton of information about who you are. If you look at the planets that you have, we all have all 13 planets, but if you see the gates that each of those activate, that would give you so much more information. In the human design system, the planets are sort of like these teachers, and they teach us a certain thing, they express this certain thing, and depending on the I Ching archetype that is activated by that planet, it will give you a lot of information about who you are, and how you move around the world. So these are some really granular topics that you can get into. That's really exciting. There are people that have training in human design that use it for relationship coaching, for example, because you can see how one person's energy interacts with another, which is cool. There are people that use it for the health stuff, like I was saying. Maybe they're health coaches or nutritionists or things like that. There's definitely a lot to say about business success strategy and, profit potentials, I think is how it's described in human design, in like human design business teachings, to give you insight on how to best bring your gifts into something like an entrepreneurial venture and how to best make money through it. So human design, I talked a lot about kind of I said it was jargony and that I was going to make it simple. It's still actually kind of hard to make human design simple if you want to understand it at a certain level of depth and practicality. But yeah, like even with, like I was saying, like putting all these things together, like astrology, I Ching, Kabbalah, whatever, like it sounds all complicated, but then you get to this chart, which also looks complicated at first, but then you can apply it into these really practical outlets in the world, which is really, really cool and really, really helpful. So, human design, subtitle, a complex system that gives you simple, practical actions to take, essentially. So that's everything I wanted to say about the human design system. I have something for you. I have a free masterclass that walks you through visually a lot of what I just described and gives you even more context into the human design system. That's called The Manual, and it's totally free, and you'll find it linked below. And also, after you pull your chart, if you ever use my software to pull your chart, which is mariahenning.com/chart, you'll also get that masterclass there. At this exact second of recording, it hasn't been released yet, but if you're listening to this at any point in the future, I'm almost certain that's already out, and it's free and it's available to you, and you can go ahead and sign up for that, again, using the link in the show notes, or just if you pull your chart, mariahenning.com/chart, you'll find it after that. So if you want to look and get a more visual picture of everything that I just described, that's a great masterclass to start off with. And depending on where I'm at in the world and what time you're listening to this, I might be offering readings where I would be able to decode for you what your human design chart means. So if that's the case, you'll find it just by DMing me on Instagram over at by Maria Henning on Instagram. So again, if you're listening to this in 5 years' time, I can't say that I'm still offering readings, but maybe somewhere in between I might be. So just DM me and we can chat about getting you someone like me who's been doing this for a while to synthesize your chart for you and give you a translation of what the heck it all means. So that's it for this episode of Shortcuts to Mastery, episode number 2 in the books, Introduction to Human Design. Go check out episode 3 for the Gene Keys, the system that currently I'm in love with and will continue to develop. And I'm actually developing even further right now in my Gene Keys reader training that's coming out very soon, the Master Key. Check out that episode for that, where we're going to borrow and really lean on some of the things that we learned today in this human design episode. And that's it. All right. See you next time. All right, my friend. Thanks for joining me on another ride aboard the Shortcuts to Mastery spaceship. You can get started on your human design and Gene Keys journey with me today for free by going to mariahenning.com/chart, which is linked below. If you're a visuals lover as well as an audiophile, then definitely join the party over on Instagram at @ByMariaHenning for lots of fun and beautiful educational content, and to tag me in the stories with the episodes you listen to so I can repost you. And of course, if you're here, you know it totally rocks for podcasts to receive great ratings, so if you're feeling warm and fuzzy and want to share, I'd be eternally grateful. I can't wait to connect again. Thanks for being here, and until next time, here's to everything going easier, better, and faster than expected.